Happy Friday and welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She is Caroline Fenton. I am Jason Fitz, and we are just recovering. We are recouping. We are trying to find our feet after an epic matchup in college football last night. Just when you thought the college football playoff couldn't get better, just when you thought it couldn't get more dramatic, it absolutely did. Whatever we thought Miami Ole Miss was going to be, it was better. The Hurricanes come out with a 31-27 lead in a game that saw fourth quarter lead changes. Caroline, this one came down a winning touchdown run with 18 seconds left for Carson Beck. Controversy on the last play of the game. This thing was absolute chaos, and you were there to witness it in person.
I was. It was epic. It was hard to put into words what it felt like being on the field for that fourth quarter, because you could literally tangibly feel the energy shift. This clip right here, you see Carson Beck's final touchdown run on that Miami sideline. It erupted, and then the Ole Miss fan base was just to my left right there, and it was pure and utter silence. You could hear a pin drop, and then you kind of felt that shift when Trinidad Chambliss just continued to hit receivers for first down after first down. You could feel the Ole Miss sideline, my goodness, start to feel even more anticipation. Just the shift was so cool to see after a first half and maybe even first three quarters that was low scoring, a lot of good defense, kind of slogging it out, a lot of kicks in that first half. But you mentioned how close it was, how tightly contested it was. Honestly, Fitz, it had no business being as close as it was. If you didn't watch the game and you did not know what the score was, and you just looked at some of the numbers and some of the statistics, Miami had the ball for 12 minutes of the first quarter. Miami had the ball for 23 minutes of the first half, and Miami had the ball for more than 41 minutes of the entirety of the game. I mean, Miami ran almost double the number of plays that Ole Miss did, yet Ole Miss continued to hang around. All the credit in the world to to Ole Miss to continue to stay in this game, to continue to find ways to make it uncomfortable. Because when Ole Miss got that first lead in the fourth quarter, that was the moment where I felt, oh my God, Miami's going to blow this. A game that they are statistically dominating in every single facet except the score. They're going to blow this. Trinidad Chambliss is going to find a way. That this Ole Miss adversity, that way that Ole Miss has had their backs against the wall, the kind of us against the world mentality that they've had for this entire college football playoff is going to come to fruition and, come to rear its ugly head again. So I thought that was such a interesting element of this game that I want to give credit to Ole Miss for, but also credit to Miami for keeping Ole Miss out of the end zone and forcing them to kick field goals to keep themselves in this lead. Credit to Carson Beck, a guy who was asked to not do too much this entire college football playoff. Fitz, he threw for a combined 250 yards in those first two games. Miami won games by running the football and by playing great defense, but he was the kind of unsuspecting hero of the game, scoring that final touchdown and ultimately punching their ticket back to Miami for the national championship game.
Well, and before we get to any of the negative, like the end of the game, let's talk about Carson for a second, because you want to talk about legacy-defining moments. You want to talk about history. When you tell the story, I say this all the time, of the college football season, now when you tell the story of this college football playoff, Carson Beck has just become a massive part of it, because to your point, not only was he throwing the football more than he had in the first two games, they were pushing the ball downfield more, which I thought was going to be part of an Achilles heel for them. I'm absolutely wrong. I was absolutely wrong in every possible way about Carson Beck last night, and you saw it. Like, he was everything that we thought Carson Beck could be at his best. He was everything that had people believe that he was possibly the best quarterback in college football this year when the season started, right? Like, you look at all of these things, and you just look at what was defined by the way that Carson Beck played, not just with his legs, but with his legs to create more opportunities with his arm, with his accuracy, with his ability to look guys off when he was pushing the ball down the field. I felt like this was everything. This was the best of Carson Beck all rolled into one against an Ole Miss defense that was out there trying their best. But my God, you mentioned the time of possession. I don't think that's even the biggest part of the story. Third down defense. Miami converted 11 third downs in this game. That's a new college football playoff record, right? 11 times. They were 11 and 19. And so many of them were Carson Beck dropping back, finding a way to make a play on 3rd and 6, on 3rd and 8, on 3rd and 7. Like, they weren't short conversions. We were seeing Miami commit to running the football. I've said this repeatedly through the college football playoff. The team that has the most rushes has won rushing attempts, not rushing yards, just rushing attempts, has won all but one game so far in the college football playoff. That is a threat. Miami was committed to running the football, but even when they weren't having success doing it, as Ole Miss was wearing down, they were still able to carve up Ole Miss because Carson Beck was wildly accurate. This was just such a prove-it moment to Carson Beck, to the entire world, where he turned around and said, yeah, I'm worth every damn penny. Doesn't matter how long I've been in college football. Doesn't matter how many programs I've played for. Doesn't matter how I got here right now. Miami has a shot at a national championship in large part because they decided to pay that man to be their quarterback this year.
And I don't want to get it twisted. Carson Beck was not flawless last night. Like, Carson Beck was overthrowing receivers. Carson Beck was inaccurate at times. Carson Beck put the ball in harm's way, and it ultimately cost them with one bad pick. That I don't think that Miami's formula for victory is through Carson Beck. I don't think that Miami's typical formula for winning college football playoff games is Carson Beck dropping back and throwing it 40 times. He was 23 of 37 last night. I thought that if Miami just ran the ball on every single down, they probably beat Ole Miss by more larger margin than they did last night. But they did put the ball in Carson Beck's hands, and he did have some pop off the page wow kind of throws, some wow kind of explosive plays. And I think that was important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's Mario Cristobal and that entire coaching staff's way of proving to Carson Beck, like, look, we trust you. We want to give you this confidence. We want to reiterate how important you are to this game plan. I think it was also important to keep Ole Miss's defense off balance. That, look, we're not going to run on every single down. We have to continue to keep you guessing. But if I could nitpick, and look, not every single victory comes flawlessly, and Miami was not flawless last night. 9 penalties. I counted 4 dropped picks, and one of those, at least one of those, could have been taken to the house, if not 2 pick sixes. So several opportunities that were left on the field out there last night. But, I thought that Miami should have run the ball more. It was so clear when Miami was running the football that they were the more physical football team. This was the first time that I got to see Mark Fletcher in person. Fitz, he was dragging 1 Ole Miss defender, 2 Ole Miss defenders, hell, even 3 Ole Miss defenders, 5, 10 extra yards downfield. Like, he was pushing them like they were kindergartners. And we're talking about 280-pound SEC linebackers here. There was just a level of physicality that Miami had in the run game that Mark Fletcher and Jamar Brown had themselves. That was just different. That was just so much better and so much bigger than what Ole Miss's defense could offer.
Well, 1,000%. And to your point, everything that went wrong for Carson Beck didn't matter in the fourth quarter because that's where he was elite. And I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's elite in that situation if they haven't just run the dog you-know-what out of that defensive line for Ole Miss. And they had by that point. Like, there was no real pressure coming at Carson. They couldn't get anything up in his face. And, ultimately, they get a huge touchdown. His first rushing touchdown since September is the go-ahead touchdown. But even with 18 seconds left, Ole Miss drives down the field. They put themselves in a situation with 6 seconds left in the game where they can win it. And I'm sorry, Caroline, like, this is where we got to get to the controversy that comes from this thing. I don't care what the time of the game is. And you and I have worked together long enough. I've been consistent about this. And people don't like this opinion from me when it plays the other way. But this is the reason I have it. Last night was the reason I have the opinion. A foul is a foul. A penalty is a penalty. I don't care what time's on the clock. If you ask referees at the end of a game to swallow their whistle because suddenly you want the go-ahead shot to have a chance to go in basketball, or you want the big touchdown to have an opportunity at the end of a football game, how often do we say, oh, we're not here to see the refs. We don't care about the refs. They need to stop interjecting themselves. Well, what you have last night is what happens when the opposite is true. Because it is so wildly clear on the replay that the wide receiver is grabbed. The defender never really looks to the ball. One arm is hooked. It's pass interference. And I have yet to find, I think, a great expert that's looked at this play in replay and not agreed with this. Like, this was clearly pass interference. And so I hear everyone when they say, oh, we don't want the refs to decide a game. Let the players play. All of these things. No. a penalty's a penalty, a foul's a foul. And you don't like that opinion, many people, when I have it when refs swallow the whistles and we get a great moment. And I hate that. I hate it in this moment too, because Ole Miss players, Ole Miss fans, they deserve, the entire Ole Miss program deserved to at least see what the game could have played out like if they'd have had the opportunity for one more play, given the fact that that was clearly pass interference.
It was clearly pass interference, and I think Miami got away with one there. If you're an Ole Miss fan waking up this morning feeling like you got jobbed by the refs, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong, but I will say that there were some questionable calls or maybe missed calls on both sides of the ball last night. An initial targeting that they threw a flag for in the fourth quarter, it was eventually called back. I thought, that's targeting. Like, that was textbook targeting. Sure, he didn't lead with his head, and sure, it wasn't crown-to-crown helmet contact, but that was targeting. Later in the game, Miami defender was called for targeting. I thought, that's not targeting. He led with the shoulder. Sure, yes, there was head-to-head contact, but he put his shoulder down and led with the shoulder. I thought, that's not targeting. If you're not going to call that first one targeting, you sure as heck cannot call this one targeting. And they did. I think that's my biggest frustration. Probably a lot of football fans' frustrations with targeting calls is the inconsistency. If you want to be lax with a flag or if you want to be tight with a flag, I have no problem at all as long as you are consistent. There were several missed PI calls on Ole Miss, on Miami. So officiating was not flawless last night, but I cannot say waking up today that the officials cost Ole Miss. I cannot say today that the officials decided that game, but I think you're fair in pointing out what was clearly a missed call in the most important time in the game in the final few seconds in Ole Miss's final opportunity.
And look, there's a couple layers to this, because you're right. No one play costs anybody a football game. I don't care what the one play is. I mean, the fact that you doinked a field goal out didn't cost Ole Miss the football game. It would have changed the trajectory of the rest of the game if that hadn't happened. One play never wins or loses the game. My issue is that when there's a ref standing right there, all right, and you look at the ref, and the first thing you think, and so many people say, is, well, you can't call it in that situation. Hail Marys have a problem. A, this wasn't a standard Hail Mary, but B, it was so egregious, you have to call it. Otherwise, why not just basically murder everybody that's in the end zone every single time? Like, at some point, it becomes so egregious that you have to call it. So the other part, to your point, and this is where everybody always says, oh, but what about that call and what about that? You're right. You're right. But just like we look at quarterbacks, you can have the game of your life as a quarterback. You can throw 5 touchdowns. But if on the last play of the game you got a wide open guy and you throw an interception, the first take the next day is going to be you're a bum because you couldn't win when the game was on the line. We're tougher on athletes when the game is on the line. I'm tougher on refs when the game is on the line. Even if you've missed every call up to that point and you've been inconsistent, none of that excuses the fact that when you are a foot away, when a ref is blocking half the cameramen because they are right there to look at it happen, and they choose to swallow their whistle on a clear and egregious pass interference, I don't really care how we got there. I'm looking at that one play, and I'm saying, you, sir, did not do your job on that one play. Either you didn't do your job because you didn't want to be the story at the end of the game, which is a stupid reason to not do your job, or you didn't do your job because you're not good enough at your job to see the call and make the call, which then makes me wonder why the hell you're on the sidelines. Either way, I have a problem with the missed, just point blank period. I have a problem with missing that call in that moment, no matter how bad or inconsistent they were leading up to that point.
If you see it, call it. That's my philosophy. You can't swallow your whistle in a moment just because it's a big moment. But before we put a bow on this conversation, I do just want to point out the Disney Channel movie feel-good story of all of this. Mario Cristobal's from Miami. Mario Cristobal won a national championship at Miami. Mario Cristobal witnessed firsthand and was part of the ascension of the U as we know it. Now he has Miami back in the national championship for the first time in almost a quarter of a century, and it's being played in Miami in a year when nobody even thought that they should be there. If Ole Miss had won this game, I would have been saying the exact same thing. How great of a story is this? Ole Miss, their coach leaves, and now they're on their way to a national championship game. But to the victor go the spoils, and I love this story and everything that it has meant to this Miami team.
Now let's see if Miami is taking on Miami's son and Fernando Mendoza. We'll find out who the opponent is tonight. We have plenty left to talk about on the college football playoff, but coming up next, another day, another job opening. The question is, what are the best head coaching jobs? What are the worst? And what's the weirdest one? We'll tell you next. NFL head coach openings. The Dolphins, the Ravens, the Giants, the Titans, the Falcons, the Cardinals, the Browns, the Raiders. Oh my. Not so far. We still have a wild weekend left of NFL action and speculation running rampant everywhere. So you see those list of available jobs, but not all jobs are created equal. I figured we'd take a look at some of the jobs and figure out best, worst, and weirdest. So, Caroline Fenton, let's start with the best. What do you think of all of the jobs that are open right now? What is the best job to you?
It's Baltimore. It's Baltimore, and it's not even close, right? If we want to judge job openings and how quote unquote good they are, there are a few things that you can look at. Quarterback situation. Well, you got a 2-time, should have been, could have been 3-time MVP in Lamar Jackson, and he just turned 29 a couple days ago. Happy belated birthday to Lamar. So he still has plenty of prime ahead of him. You have talent all around that roster. Another thing that I look at is the ownership situation. You know, are you heading into a stable organization? I think that Baltimore has some of the most stable organizational structure and stable ownership in the entire NFL. Any coach that takes over this job will be inheriting a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So it's Baltimore, and Baltimore's in a league of its own. That caliber of a team doesn't fire their coach very often, Fitzy.
Yeah, look, it's Baltimore, and it's not even close. And I mean, not even close. Giants fans, hear me out. I get it. I'm excited for you. Like, I'm excited for the New York Giants
Totally.
and what their job could look like. And I'm excited for who Jackson Dart could be. But also, I would like for everybody to rewind to just a year ago when we were talking about, I don't know, Michael Penix Jr. Like, it was just a given that Michael Penix Jr. was absolutely the future, the answer, and everything was known based on part of a season as a starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. I like more time on task than just part of a rookie season to make any sweeping generalizations about my quarterback. So I have a hard time anointing Jackson Dart in the same conversation that Lamar is in. Oh, Lamar and Derrick Henry. So as much as I love what the Giants' job looks like, considering you got young talent at skill positions, you have Jackson Dart as your quarterback, you've got some stars on the defensive side of the ball, you've got excitement, you've got a legacy franchise, you've got a wide open East, all of these things that you could say about the job. And that's, I think, part of the reason a lot of people love the Giants' job. It ain't the Baltimore Ravens. It just isn't. If you look across the board at what Baltimore has, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, there's a reason that they walked into this season presumptive as one of the teams destined to be in the Super Bowl conversation. And in a year where they didn't necessarily use their offensive weapons as much as they could have, should have, or would have, to the point that it got a coach fired, I look around and say, man, that talent is still there. This is still the Baltimore Ravens. This is still a consistently good franchise. I don't think it's even close. And I always go back to before I was even in this business, when I was just sitting at an event and I was talking to Herm Edwards before I ever worked at ESPN eventually with Herm. And Herm told me, he said, let me tell you, kid, NFL's simple. If you have a quarterback, you're a great coach. If you don't have a quarterback, you aren't. Jackson Dart might be a quarterback. Lamar sure as hell is. You got a 2-time MVP at the quarterback position. You got that man running the rock. It ain't even close. That's the best job. What about the
And the
opposite,
arguments,
oh,
sorry, Fitzy, really quickly, the argument against Baltimore being the best job that I have heard is, well, they have really high expectations. Duh. Expectations are a privilege in the NFL. If you're a prospective head coach and you are too scared of the expectations in Baltimore, you probably shouldn't be a head coach anywhere. If it's not Baltimore, if that's the low-hanging fruit, if that's the obvious answer, I think it is the Giants. But I don't miss me with the expectations are too high in Baltimore. Who cares? That's a great thing. That's a privilege to be able to be delivering on Super Bowl expectations.
you're so right, because think about it. Like, in what other industry? Hey, I'm going to give you the best tools of all of the tools available, but there's going to be some pressure. If you take the best tools, you got to build the best house. Okay, I'm going to give you the best ingredients to cook with, and you by far the best ingredients. You're going to have absolutely chef's kiss, Michelin star ingredients, but you're going to have to cook the best meal. At some point, if you believe in what you do and you give them the best ingredients, you believe you're going to be able to win a Super Bowl. So I'm with you totally. What about the opposite end of this? What do you think is the worst of all of the job opportunities?
There were several contenders for this one, because I know there's only 32 of these in the world. I understand that, but there are some doozies out there. I ultimately landed on the Arizona Cardinals. Looking at the quarterback situation, there is not a lot, if any, long-standing proof of concept and long-standing proof of success in Arizona. what's the future at the quarterback position? You have so much money tied up in Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is not even close to an elite quarterback in the National Football League. I think some of us have questioned, is Kyler Murray even a starting quarterback in the National Football League? Marvin Harrison Jr. was supposed to be one of the saviors of the organization. He's looked more like Mazda Marv than Maserati Marv for a overwhelming majority of his career so far. I was between the Cardinals and the Dolphins. The reason why I ultimately ended up with the Cardinals is because I believe in alignment with timelines. Arizona held on to Monty Ossenfort, their general manager. The Dolphins totally and completely cleaned house. So the Dolphins' new head coach will be coming in with a brand new GM. They will be on the same timeline. They ideally would be in lockstep. That GM would be hiring their guy at the head coaching position, whereas Arizona is going to be, Monty Ossenfort will be on a different timeline than their next head coach. And I don't always think that that's the best structure for an organization.
I hear that answer a lot, and I like that. I went with Miami as the worst opening, which seems counterintuitive to what a lot of people are saying right now. But this is so simple for me. There's no money to spend. They have the fourth least amount of salary cap space, and I know that they can work their way out of that. But to work their way out of that, they're going to have to get rid of a bunch of contracts, which is fine. But as you get rid of a bunch of contracts, those are players you're going to have to replace, which you can't easily do because you don't have the money. And even if you get to the right side of the cap by restructuring a bunch of things, you're not going to be in a situation where you can spend anywhere near what the other teams can spend that are currently sitting at the top of this thing. So you're not going to be able to acquire a bunch of talent. You're not picking high enough in the draft to get yourself any real solution at the quarterback position, and you don't have the quarterback that can solve it in the building right now. So whoever takes that job, to me, is basically looking at year one is just going to be thrown away, and you're going to try and suck as much as you can to try and start the process of rebuilding what needs to be rebuilt financially and at the quarterback position. That might be easy to do in that division too, by the way, because you got the Bills and you got the Patriots that you're up against, but it's going to require tremendous patience and I think a complete rebuild in Miami. So because I don't believe that Tua is the answer, and because I can't find an easy out from that Tua contract that doesn't really hinder them financially, and I can't find a way for them to suck enough to get where they need to get a quarterback next year, I don't love the Dolphins job. Let me quickly clarify one thing too, Caroline, because this is where everybody says, go get a quarterback next year. I'm going to die on this hill over and over and over again. Take a shot every time you hear me say this. The problem with the logic of we will suck next year and get a quarterback next year, which is what I think Dolphins fans are going to think, you can't promise that you can out-suck the rest of the suck in the NFL now. And with a historic number of teams every year that are tragically bad, you don't know that you're going to win 3 games next year and end up with the 4th pick in the draft, because that's literally what's happening right now. So I'll take the Dolphins as the worst one. What's the biggest variable? Like the one that could go any which way you are wildly confused by?
So much of how I categorize these jobs is the quarterback or the quarterback situation. So I view the Titans as the biggest wild card because I view Cam Ward as a wild card. We have seen on full display the sheer and utter talent of this man, the arm talent, the clutch gene. We saw that going back to his time in Miami when he was a Heisman Trophy finalist. But his rookie season wasn't great. Not a whole lot of tangible things that you can take away to say, okay, no, this guy legitimately is our franchise quarterback. Is that because he had a whole lot of suck around him? Probably. Is it because of him? Maybe. I can't answer that question. That's why I think this is such a wild card, that Cam Ward could end up being Tennessee's franchise quarterback. Cam Ward also could end up being a bust and a backup for the rest of his career. I don't know. I truly don't know, which is why I think this job is so intriguing and why it's so paramount that the Titans get this hire right. I've said it before. I'll say it a million times again. Bad organizations fail young quarterbacks way more than young quarterbacks fail organizations. And right now, the Titans are failing Cam Ward. They can fix that by hiring the right coach to help and develop him. I also think the Titans ownership is a total and complete wild card. Go back to 2021. They have fired someone in charge every single year since then. If it's not a coach, it's a general manager, and it has been a vicious cycle ever since then. So I think Amy Adams-Strunk, the owner of the Tennessee Titans, she can wake up one day and change her mind about who she thinks should be in charge of and run this organization. So for that, it's a wild card as well.
Yeah, I will take the biggest wild card selfishly, but my beloved Raiders, I think, are the biggest wild card in the cycle for many of the same reasons you just mentioned. Mark Davis is just impossible to predict in general. I'm not sure what the team's going to do. Are they going to look for a legend to stabilize? They tried that. It didn't work for them. Are they going to look for a young upstart coach that's going to come in? And if they are, what's that young upstart coach's vision at the quarterback position? Does that young coach prefer Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore? Should he come out in the draft? Does that young coach prefer neither of them? In which case, what the hell do you do with the first overall pick? I mean, I genuinely, as we sit today right now, you could talk me into the Raiders make a very safe hire of somebody that's been a coach multiple times, that's going to stabilize and probably be fired in the next 2 years. They're going to trade away everything and they're just going to try a long rebuild. You could also talk me into the Raiders are hiring Clint Kubiak as a hot shot to come in, and Clint absolutely loves Fernando Mendoza, and all of a sudden we're sitting here with Fernando, Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, and you're looking at this and saying, wow, this thing looks like it could be much better than I genuinely have no idea. I expect my beloved Raiders to blow it, but I have no idea how it will play out. We'll get back to plenty of the coaching cycle because there's plenty of news there to keep breaking down. But coming up next, the great Jay Busbee going to join us. We'll talk to Jay about the college football playoff, the epic matchup we saw, what we might see next, all of it coming up next. Miami is headed to the national championship by way of a 31-27 win over Ole Miss in the Fiesta Bowl. They're playing for a title for the first time since 2003 in an absolutely epic game with an epic finish. With that, we welcome in one of our favorite guests to break down everything we saw. Our beloved senior writer, Jay Busbee, joining us. All right, Jay, where are you on what we saw last night and what it means? Like, is the U back? What did you make of all that?
I mean, it was tremendous. That is exactly what you want out of a college football game. Coming down to the last second, the last play, controversy on the last play, dramatic comebacks on both sides of the ball. This is exactly why we love college football. Nothing to compare to the NFL, nothing to compare to the NBA, just the pure madness of these two programs with such historical legacy behind both of them, but no recent success, coming together and setting up this amazing national championship for, in this case, Miami.
It was so special to watch a battle of the improbables. It felt like yesterday in Phoenix. But Mario Cristobal has been kind of under the microscope for a lot of decisions that he's made, tactical decisions that he's made. And look, I think that criticism is fair. What have you learned about Mario Cristobal in these last 3 games and their path to now getting to a national championship?
He has figured out how to get all of the weapons pointed in the right direction. More importantly, he's figured out how to use the clock. I mean, that's the main thing. Everybody in America thought the same thing when Miami's down with a few minutes left and they're driving. How is Cristobal going to screw this up? How is he going to manage to ruin the clock and ruin Miami's chances? And right down to the last seconds, everyone's thinking, oh my gosh, Carson Beck's going to try something and it's going to completely fail on him. It didn't. It didn't blow up. All of it was leading right to this. I'm not saying that Miami had to go through those clock catastrophes to lead this point, but they certainly helped to prepare him for this moment. And that's the key here. Everything that he's done in his career has led up to this exact moment. His recruiting, his focus on defense, his focus on the line, it all led up to this. And so, yes, it has all come here for him. He can erase every single bit of the bad narratives that have surrounded him as he's gotten to this point with one more win.
So let's look at the quarterback here, because if I had told you in June that Carson Beck led a 15-play drive for a winning touchdown on his legs in the semifinal, most of us would have said, of course, presumptive first overall pick Carson Beck, right? Like, let's not forget, not that long ago, people thought Carson Beck was going to be the best of this quarterback class. What do we make of a quarterback that's had some bad film early in the season and now is just playing so hot? What's it mean for his future in the NFL to you?
I mean, it's funny because I don't think that he's headed for, Patrick Mahomes territory or Drake May territory or anything like that. I kind of see him as like a Nick Foles type where he's going to go and he's going to join a team, but he's going to lurk on the lower end of the roster, and then somebody's going to get hurt and he's going to jump in and lead, I don't know, the Eagles, the Bills, someone like that on a last-second Nick Foles kind of run, because that's exactly what we had here, where he comes in, he steps in, he has all kinds of troubles, he's throwing the ball to other teams all season long, and then right when he needs to the most, he makes that amazing drive, and then that kind of last-second run there to the end zone. Our buddy Ross Dellinger had a great column on it last night about how it redeemed everything that has been said about him all these last years. I mean, he had a rough exit from Georgia, and he had all kinds of criticism surrounding him. And he, like Cristobal, has the chance to completely erase all the bad vibes around him, and he worked to this point, and it was tremendous.
The SEC had more teams represented in the college football playoff than any other conference this season. But now, for the third year in a row, the national championship will be SEC-less, for lack of a better word. Is this panic time for the conference that has been so dominant over the last 2 decades?
Yeah, it's not panic time, but panic time's not far down the road. I mean, I saw someone on Twitter put it this way, that car dealer money is very, very different from oil money and from NVIDIA money, because the SEC is starting to realize that when everybody can pay players, there's a whole lot of deep pockets out there that can afford to get a whole lot better players that might have gone to the SEC. Plus, players are not as willing to go and stay and sit in a system behind other starters for 2 or 3 years, the way that they were in, say, the Saban years. That was Saban's genius. He would get 5 stars and he would make them sit for a few years at Alabama with the promise, not just the assumption, but the promise that they would be playing for a national championship 2 years down the line. These days, no one's going to sit around for that anymore. Ty Simpson might be the last example of that. So, yeah, I think that the talent diffusal around the United States and around all of the conferences means that the SEC has lost its edge, and it's going to have to work now. It doesn't mean that the SEC is completely doomed. I mean, one play different last night, and we're talking about how the ACC was close but not quite. And instead here we're talking about the SEC correctly being close but not quite. So, yeah, it's going to be tricky for the next few seasons. This is where we find out if the ACC can adjust to a level playing field.
I want to try and figure out what all this means for Ole Miss, Busbee, because certainly what we just saw was this incredible – I feel like America was rooting for Ole Miss, right? Like there's just the narrative, and it was such a special playoff run. I can't figure out how sustainable that is when it rolls into next year. So was this a magical moment or the beginning of a new chapter of Ole Miss dominance?
I mean, the question is whether they are able to build on it with recruiting. It's everybody else, that is facing the same exact problem that Ole Miss is now. Yes, they could ride this. Nobody believes in us. Our head coach ran out on us. We don't have anything to fight for but ourselves. They could ride that for this playoff run. It's come to an end, sadly, for Ole Miss. But, yeah, I mean, they put themselves on the map. They have visibility in a way that they didn't have before. And that's part of the fight here. I mean, Indiana has showed us it doesn't matter what you used to be even 3 years ago. If you can turn around your team with recruiting, with the right coaching, with the right attitude, with the right money, I should say, before anything, then anything is possible. And that's what Ole Miss is looking at right now. They got themselves on the national map. They put themselves ahead of every other SEC team in this college football playoff. Now, what do they do with it?
Busbee, I'm going to take you straight into first take land here. We're going to get you right out on a hot take, okay? So you have to bet the Busbee empire, the entire empire, on this question.
All in.
More likely to play for a national championship first, Ole Miss or Lane Kiffin?
I got to say Lane Kiffin. As much as I would love to see Lane Kiffin get close and not do it, I think that in terms of what he's got available to him at LSU, he's got the resources, he's got the talent, he's got the draw. I think that he will be closer than Ole Miss is. But if he is, there's going to be a huge contingent of Ole Miss fans buying tickets to that just to boo him from the stands.
Jay Busbee officially stays on my good side. So correct answer there.
Smart.
I love it. Correct answer. Where I want to be.
Thank you. Very smart. That is the correct answer. Yes, thank you very much. But look, I can take my purple and gold tinted glasses off and acknowledge what Lane Kiffin did to Ole Miss and how he's kind of acted ever since. It's a bad look for him.
Yeah.
Is he the villain, not just of college football, but of sports?
That's a good hot take question. I would say that the owners that pull NFL teams out of cities are well ahead of Lane Kiffin. If we're talking about villains among coaches, he's kind of more like the Joker. He's just sowing chaos everywhere he goes. So, if you end up on the losing end of that chaos, then it's going to be rough, like for Ole Miss. But yeah, I mean, that's what makes him so fascinating is he doesn't quite seem to care what wreckage he leaves in his wake, and he'll go right on and sign up with a hot yoga studio in Baton Rouge and leave Oxford behind. So it's going to be tremendously fun to watch him as long as you are not involved in his dealings. And so, yes, LSU fans, I have to say it's going to be a lot of fun for a while, and it's going to end badly.
I mean, let's be honest. I'm in for this because I always say the best Batman movies aren't defined by Batman. They're defined by the villains. So, give me the best villains in sports. That gives us the best stories. So, all right, let's go to tonight's matchup. We've got a matchup, Busbee, my fandom. I'm watching this matchup not just because I love college football, but because I'm likely watching my next quarterback. As we got Fernando Mendoza versus Dante Moore. We still don't know if Dante's coming out. We still technically don't know if Fernando is. But presuming both of these guys come out in the NFL draft, what do you make of the NFL prospects of these two guys compared to each other?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously Mendoza has the Heisman. He has the gaudier stats. He has this big win. But this is what's interesting. I was talking to our friend Nate Tice about this. These games become like, the old NCAA tournament games where a guy has one amazing game and all of a sudden he bumps up several spots in the draft. There is a huge emphasis placed on these big games for good reason. First of all, NFL GMs don't have a whole lot of time to watch every tape of every Rutgers game that these guys play, but also they want to see how they're going to perform in the biggest situations. They want to see absolutely how they're going to come through on the biggest possible stage with the entire country watching them. And so I think that there's a lot more variance for Moore here than there is for Mendoza. Mendoza's pretty set. We know what you're getting out of him. You know the comps for him. You know the basic stability that he has. Moore, it's still a little bit of a question mark. Dan Lanning earlier this week was trying to, I'm not going to say make excuses, but trying to reset expectations for Moore based on the loss to Indiana earlier this season. He said Dante's a different player now. Said he's a completely different player than he was against Indiana. He's grown a lot. He's learned a lot. And so what Dante Moore is able to do in this game could go a long way to determining whether he's QB2 or whether he's drafted a little farther down in the first round.
I'm not normally a pro rematch in the playoffs kind of person, but I am looking at my clock, just waiting with bated breath for this game. Who is the coaching advantage in this one?
Well, that is such a great question because they come at it from such a completely different angle. I think that Cignetti is kind of like the guy that just absolutely does not take any kind of outside input. He's going to do exactly what he wants to do. He's a Saban disciple. They both are, but Cignetti really has taken it from Saban. I think that Lanning has a little bit more of a scheming advantage, a little bit more of a wider field of view advantage, but I don't know. I mean, the way that Cignetti has built this team in his own image, the way that he wanted to, with the kind of players that he wants, the kind of older players that he wants, the kind of discipline that he wants. I think that on the coaching side, it's Cignetti by an inch.
All right, Busbee, I'm not 100% convinced that you won't be a running back for Oregon in tonight's game. I don't know. I'm just saying running back room's gotten a little thin. I mean, I don't know how your hips are feeling, buddy. No, let's go. Let's go. All right, so the transfer portal has been a huge part of why they've had a couple of guys declare for the transfer portal, and now they're missing. The calendar's broken. Explain to everybody a little bit of how we got here and if there's a solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's a situation where you had multiple different calendar needs in the NFL, but in college football between the transfer portal and the playoffs. And as these both expanded, they started overlapping with each other to where you've got this ridiculous situation now where the transfer portal is happening while the season is still going on. Both head coaches talked about this week how they had to spend time recruiting, taken away from game planning for a college football semifinal game to do recruiting and to avoid getting burned in the transfer portal. I mean, think of the absurdity of that. Think of an NFL head coach in the playoffs having to go and talk about his third string D lineman because he wanted to keep them on the team. I mean, that's absurd. So something has to change. We all know this. Something will change. But at the moment, it's a situation where you've got the players have to look out for their own interest because they lose the opportunity to transfer after this. But the teams have to look out for their own interest too to keep everybody on the roster. And yes, I am ready to suit up if called.
I would.
Last one
for money on you. Go ahead.
I would too. I'm never going to be one to bet against Jay Busbee, but last one before we let you go, Busbee. If you are Miami, who do you want to win tonight, and who do you think wins tonight and punches their ticket to the national championship game?
Wow. Miami might hope for somehow just like a forfeit. I mean, because either one of these teams are going to be brutal. I don't know. I mean, I would probably say you would want Oregon just because of the way that Indiana decimated Alabama, and they seem to have everything working. They have the experience advantage. Everything seems to be working Indiana's way, so maybe they would want Oregon for that standpoint. I am taking Oregon. I had picked just by a slim margin. I think that Oregon has come on strong, especially in this playoffs here. I would like to see what Indiana does when they are really tested. I know Alabama was a good team, but I don't think they tested Indiana to the extent that Oregon will. And I think that might very well be the edge. I'm going to go Oregon 27, Indiana 24.
I cannot wait for the starting lineup introductions when we see Busbee just popping the helmet on and jogging on out. Get some icy hot, man. That first hit's going to hit different. That first hit's going to hit. Obviously, read him on all of our Yahoo sites. Follow him on social media. Jay Busbee, man, we always appreciate your time and your insight. Travel safe, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Take care, my friends.
Thank you, Busbee.
Always the best. All right, coming up, are we sure they're safe? We have some huge matchups that involve playoff teams whose coaches might still get fired. What? We'll tell you about it next. marked safe from one-and-done playoff firings. Oh, Facebook would never, but they should. Let's take a look at some of the coaches that we have here. The premise is pretty simple. All right, we're going to operate under the assumption that all the teams we're discussing in this segment here lose this weekend. So no matter what you think of the game, our presumption is going to be these teams lose. So the question is, if they lose in this game this weekend, are they gone? All right, so let's take a look at some of these.
Wait, can we acknowledge Harbaugh looking over all of these head coaches that are going in with at least a little bit of a warm seat into the playoffs? Look at him. It's like he's just looking over all of us as we remember the legend of John Harbaugh. He's looking over us.
It's very Emperor Palpatine, which, Caroline, is a reference you will not understand because you do not love Star Wars the right way.
I do not know that, man.
Thank you so much. You know what? That's what we're finally going to do. When Caroline and I are hanging out in person, we're not actually going to talk sports at all. We're just going to pop in Star Wars,
watch Star Wars.
A New Hope, and we'll go through there. The world will thank me. All right, so let's take a look at some of these coaches. We'll start with Tomlin because that's the one we hear the most about, right? Like Tomlin is always in the news at this point. So if the Steelers lose, is Tomlin safe? Is he marked safe or is he gone?
I don't think he's going to be safe. If he is safe, I will be 0% surprised. He's Mike Tomlin, hasn't had a losing season, always gets the Steelers to the postseason. He is viewed as, rightfully so, one of the best coaches in the National Football League. He is the face of stability. But is that what you want? Is stability? I mean, of course you do. But is what you want making the playoffs and losing in the first round every year for the last decade? No, we even talked to Joey Molinaro, a die-hard Steelers fan, and he was like, get him out! Get him out of here. Anything short of making a run in the playoffs is just not good enough. So I don't think that he will be safe. I don't think necessarily he should be safe. I think it's fair to question if things have just run its course in Pittsburgh. You can do much worse than going 9-8 and making the postseason every single year. And that's the risk that you run if you do move on from Mike Tomlin. But what if you move on from Mike Tomlin, and then that's the move that you need to make to get the Pittsburgh Steelers back into Super Bowl contention? So I don't think that he is safe necessarily. Mike Tomlin might be on our TVs next year.
Here's the thing, Caroline. One thing we've always embraced on this show is that sometimes the answer "I don't know" is actually real. So I don't know if Tomlin is going to get fired or not. I do know this. I don't think it's an accident at all that we're not hearing anything about quick hirings. Everybody's taking their time with the interviews. Harbaugh might not even interview anywhere until next week. Why? Because I think everybody in league circles, even NFL teams, don't know what's going to happen with Tomlin and the Steelers. So before anybody rules anything in or out, they're all waiting to see how this one plays out. So I think the entire NFL, people in the know, people within organizations are sitting around right now saying, I don't know. So I think it's a fair answer. I will say this. I hear you, Steelers fans. I'm long on the record that Tomlin should not be fired. That is my opinion. The one thing I will say that I believe strongly, if Tomlin is fired, he'll be one of the best candidates. I'm not sure people will value him over Harbaugh. We'll see. I don't think the Steelers, should they move on from Tomlin, are the best job. I don't think the Steelers are even the second best job. They don't have a clear path to a quarterback. They have no way to fix the problem that's been ailing them. The overpriced defense didn't do what it needs to do. They need a lot of roster help. So Steelers fans, man, I think you might end up looking in the mirror and saying, all right, I'm tired of stability. But then all of a sudden you get out to the dating apps, you start swiping around and you realize that you're not the 10 you thought you were. Let's go to the next team now that I've thrown shade all over the Steelers. If the Bills lose, if the Buffalo Bills lose to the higher-seeded Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville, is McDermott safe? Is he marked safe, or is he gone?
Nope, he gone. He gone. And look, our producer, Josh Golden, is a diehard Bills fan, so if he wants to hop in my ear and check me on this one, please, Josh, feel free to do so. But if John Harbaugh is on the market, that starts to change things for me. If I'm a Bills fan, I'm kind of buying into the idea of if the Bills do lose in the first round of the postseason, looking at kicking the tires on John Harbaugh. Because you look at the Buffalo Bills right now. Is Joe Burrow in your way? Nope. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Nope, nothing that has been traditionally standing in Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills' way of getting to a Super Bowl is there this season. This is the perfect opportunity for the Buffalo Bills to finally break through and get to or win a Super Bowl. And if they don't just fall short of that, but lose in the first round of the playoffs, that is an epic disaster and a massive disappointment. And I think that Sean McDermott will pay for it.
Josh has gotten in my ear and said, for the record, he would absolutely hate Harbaugh as his coach. One of the wildest things, peek behind the curtain,
more than Sean
on this
McDermott.
show. One of the wildest things to me is that Josh, our Bills fan, is absolutely out on Harbaugh, doesn't want McDermott, and actually wants Kevin Stefanski, whereas our producer, Mike Goldfarb, who's with us Monday through Thursday, is a lifelong diehard Browns fan, and he was so excited to see Stefanski out. So we got one fan over here craving Stefanski and another fan saying, get him out. I think McDermott's job safe. I'm going to keep dying on this hill. The problem have been the weapons that needs to be addressed. I understand the playoff performance hasn't been good enough. I also understand the why the playoff performances haven't been good enough. I think the context matters, and I think this is, on the whole, a weird hiring cycle. So I don't see somebody that is clearly better than McDermott. I think McDermott enters next year clearly with one of those statements from ownership of it needs to get better and a reminder that the job is hot next year, not this year. How about this one? A great-looking man, but Matt LaFleur, Packers head coach, dashingly good-looking. But there are Packers fans out there that say that if they lose, he should be gone. If they lose in Chicago in the snow, is he marked safe or is he bye?
I think he's safe. I think he's safe because I think the way if the Packers,
that was very definitive.
Yeah,
I really, you sold me on that 100%.
Thank you. I like to feel incredibly emboldened in my hot takes. No, I keep saying it over and over again because I'm trying to talk myself into it. But I do think he's safe. Because if the Packers go into Soldier Field and lose this game, I think you can step back and say, well, injuries have derailed this team. That maybe if the Packers do lose this game, it's different if they have a Micah Parsons. I don't know. So I do think Matt LaFleur is safe even in a loss.
I think for me, the harder thing to come to grips with is where we are on Jordan Love. And I know, I just get killed all the time for my Jordan Love opinion because when it's super hot, when he's super hot, I still sit back there and say, I'd like to see more, more consistency. And when he's super not hot, I sit there and say, I'd like to see more consistency. I've never been as high or as low as anybody is on Jordan Love. I'm just sitting back saying, I don't really know if Jordan Love is him. I look around at the Packers, and I think with what they've got, they've done a really good job, particularly offensively, which is where LaFleur is supposed to be at his best. So I think LaFleur's marked safe. I'm not wildly confident in what Green Bay has or what they're doing, but I think LaFleur is marked safe. Let's get one more in. How about the Eagles? What about Philadelphia coming off of a Super Bowl? Do you see a world where if Sirianni loses in the first playoff matchup, where suddenly Philly is done?
Nick Sirianni's not going to lose his job. Nick Sirianni's not getting fired 1 year removed from a Super Bowl. And I've been the first person that's been very critical of Nick Sirianni and some questionable fourth downs throughout the entirety of the season. I do think in order for Nick Sirianni to get off of any sort of hot seat that might exist, he needs to move on from offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo. That offense is atrocious. It is brutal to watch. So I do think Kevin Patullo will not be marked safe, but I do think Nick Sirianni is safe. You don't fire a coach 1 year removed from winning the big one.
Yeah, I can't see any world where Sirianni isn't the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles next year. It's just impossible for me to find that coming off of a Super Bowl, and I understand it. I understand the Eagles fans are always somewhere in the middle of catastrophe. I understand the Eagles fans are always somewhere in the middle of chaos, and I understand that it's the passion of the fan base in part that makes the gig absolutely incredible. But the reality of it is, if you're Sirianni, you are coming off of a Super Bowl with a couple of appearances. This is just going to be yelling and screaming. I can't see any world where Sirianni isn't the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. It is wild to me, though, and it says something about expectations in the NFL right now that we see so many teams struggle to figure out what they're doing at the head coaching position. You see bad franchises making change after change after change But then what do we see from good franchises? We don't see anything from good franchises that give us sort of this sort of same chaos. But now suddenly this year we are. These are all stable, good franchises that suddenly don't seem to really know what's happening at the head coaching position. I think the fact that it's not a great hiring cycle probably impacts some of this, but realistically, I'm not 100% sure any of us really know.
All right, and look, hey, Nick Sirianni, like I said, I've been incredibly critical of what he has done in the past, but I think it comes down to, look, you win a championship, and that's the most important thing that you can do in this league. Look, there have been plenty of question marks surrounding Philadelphia. The offense needs some work. When you have one of the best wide receiver duos in all of the National Football League, then you need to be putting up more than 5 passing yards in several different halves throughout the entirety of the season. When you have a guy in Saquon Barkley that was looking like an MVP caliber type of player last year, who was largely carrying you to the Super Bowl last season, then you need to be putting up more points. You need to be putting up more yards. This is a Philadelphia Eagles season that, if they do fall short, if they do drop a game in the first round of the postseason, I don't think that it'll be okay, everything's all sunshine and rainbows and everyone returns next season. However, Nick Sirianni will be safe.
Yeah, massive change doesn't always equal massive solution. I think you'll see teams be clear in the need for a hot seat next year. I don't think we'll see some of the change other people seem to think. We got plenty more to break down. We are just getting started. Hour number 2 of Yahoo Sports Daily coming right around the corner. We'll figure out Cupid or stupid. Matchmaking with some of the hottest names on the coordinator market coming up next. Oh, it's time for Cupid or Stupid. We're going to play matchmaker with the hottest names on the coordinator market. So we're specifically going to look at some of the big name coordinators whose names are being floated all over the place as possible head coaching candidates in the NFL. And as we get into
look
this,
how cute we looked as Cupids.
Yeah, can we pull that back up? I was so.
Look
you know
how
what?
cute we look.
That is That is pretty good. Although I gotta say, guys, like I've been working out hard for a long time. I'm on a cut right now. Maybe find something with a little more refined arms.
Find a chiseled Cupid. Come on,
Yeah,
guys.
if we could find
What
a
are we
chiseled
doing?
Cupid, I'd appreciate it. I'm just, little things. Cupid or stupid. We'll take a look at some of the coordinators. Also, we do have some news that is coming in. Ian Rappaport, Rap Sheet out here, tweeting some coordinator news. Let's start with that one as we take a look. The Ravens have requested to interview Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady for their head coach position. Sources said he can interview after Buffalo plays. So what we're going to do is take a look at some coordinators, figure out if there's a perfect match. We'll say Cupid, reveal the match, or we'll just tell you it's a terrible idea, in which case it's stupid. So let's start with this one. Joe Brady to the Ravens. Cupid or stupid to you, Caroline?
I love Joe Brady. I think Joe Brady will and should get an opportunity as a head coach in the NFL. Look, the Bills have a top 5 offense in the NFL at this point. Josh Allen looks like the best quarterback on the planet. But I think this is stupid. The Bills offense has been inconsistent. You can say, well, that's because they don't have a reliable deep threat. And you would be correct in that. It may be much more of a Jimmy's and Joe's issue than it is an X's and O's issue. But there have been times when I've looked at the Bills offense and I've had a lot of question marks. So that's one reason. I understand that Joe Brady is a brilliant offensive mind, but that's one reason. The other reason is Joe Brady's never done that before. And in Baltimore, you would be stepping into a situation where it is a Super Bowl window. As a first-time head coach, and of course, he can put pieces around him and coaches around him to help him go through the trials and tribulations that come with being a first-time head coach in the National Football League. But is a guy who has never held that position before. Is he ready to take on a role like that, where you're inheriting a team that is currently in a Super Bowl window that could be closing in the next 3 to 5 years? And maybe it's longer. Look, don't get me wrong, but they're in a Super Bowl window right now. Is Joe Brady ready to handle that? If I'm the Ravens, I would like to hire someone with a little bit more of a proof of concept.
Yeah, and I think, all of this is stupid to me for Joe Brady because I'm with you. You and I were standing 10 feet from each other on the sidelines when Joe Brady won a national championship game as the passing coordinator with LSU and Joe Burrow. And when he was hired by the Panthers, I thought, man, this is going to be – we just watched what this man can do with offense, and this is going to be incredible. Update, 'twasn't, right? Because it's amazing how when you don't have some of those weapons, things look wildly different. Now you mentioned they have a top 5 offense in Buffalo. Yeah, they absolutely do. I think Josh Allen has proven that Josh Allen is the reason that they're always going to have a great offense in Buffalo. Maybe Joe Brady deserves credit. Maybe he doesn't. I honestly don't know. So I don't want the variable. For me, we love offensive coordinators that have worked with great quarterbacks. Show me that he turned around and developed a great quarterback out of nothing, and I'll look at it and say, oh, my God, yeah, that's a guy. Right now, it's just such a leap for me that I think this one's kind of stupid. What about one of the hot names we've heard a lot? Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy, Cupid or stupid? You can Cupid him wherever you want, or you can just say stupid and he has to sit on his couch.
I think that this is Cupid. And I think it would be Cupid with the Tennessee Titans. I think what Cam Ward needs, again, is somebody that has experience, that has been around in this league, that has coached a lot of quarterbacks. And that's exactly what Matt Nagy has done. I don't think the Titans can go back into the well like they did with Brian Callahan and bring in a first-time head coach. That's too risky, in my opinion. The Titans cannot afford to get this hire wrong. So I know that Matt Nagy might not be the sexiest name out there on the market, but what he has done has seen a lot of football and developed a lot of quarterbacks. The other obvious thing, I'm burying the lead here, Mike Morganzi, the general manager in Tennessee, who was just elevated to be the premier decision maker with the Tennessee Titans, came from the Kansas City Chiefs. He talked at a press conference, talked about how he wants to build the Tennessee Titans like the Kansas City Chiefs, but in his own way. You might say, well, the reason why the Kansas City Chiefs are the Kansas City Chiefs is because of Patrick Mahomes. You're not wrong there, but that Mike Morganzi and Matt Nagy are kind of cut from the same Kansas City Chiefs cloth, so I think that would make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I hear that. I come back to this all the time, though. I'm going to be consistent with Nagy as I was with Eric Bieniemy when everybody said, oh, Eric Bieniemy absolutely has to be a head coach in the NFL. It's like, well, I get you're doing things with the Chiefs, but how much of that is Andy Reid? How much of that is Patrick Mahomes? And how much of that is is you in this situation. And the funny thing is, while I think it's a blatant oversimplification, AI usually is, if you type into AI, why was Matt Nagy fired? I just think it's interesting to get some of that context of why he was fired. It says, due to a combination of a stagnant offense, poor quarterback development, especially with Justin Fields, failure to adapt his offensive scheme, declining results after a strong start, and issues with team discipline. I don't think all of that is squarely on Matt Nagy, but the Matt Nagy experiment in Chicago didn't go well. So to me, the number one thing I want answered when an experiment didn't go well is I want the easy pinpoint of why. What happened and how will this time be different? I'm sure that Matt Nagy going and working in Kansas City has given him some different perspective that might, maybe after being a head coach and going back to Kansas City, he gets a little bit more understanding of, okay, here's what's good and here's what's bad. Here's what I could have done differently. I don't think we've seen some great moment from Kansas City since he got there that makes me say, oh, he's redeemed himself like we have from some of the other coaches we're going to talk about. Bringing me to one of these, Brian Flores. Brian Flores, Cupid or stupid, the defensive coordinator for the Vikings. Cupid or stupid for Brian Flores?
I'm going to say Cupid as the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. And look, if it's not in Minnesota, but I think that he is such a perfect fit in Minnesota. And Fitz, you brought up a very, very fair point that if you are an owner in the National Football League, then are you going to go out and hire a guy that is currently suing all 32 owners in the National Football League? Maybe not. But I look at this Minnesota Vikings team, and this defense is a massive reason why they were at least relevant, or at least beat the Lions on Christmas Day, or at least were able to find some there toward the end of the season. If it's not Minnesota, I do think that Brian Flores would be a fascinating fit in Baltimore if he was able to bring in the right guy to be the OC, the right guy that had a good rapport and a good relationship with Lamar Jackson. So if not Cupid in Minnesota, I do think it would be Baltimore. But overall, if I had to tailor make and pick the perfect place for Brian Flores, I think it would be as the defensive coordinator in Minnesota.
Yeah, I actually agree with you 100%. And I keep going back to something that Ryan Fitzpatrick said on a podcast talking about Brian Flores and where it went wrong. And he talked a lot about Flores and sort of some of the way that he handled people and some of the things. Look, you can learn from that. I get it. But Ryan is the farthest thing from a hot take artist, right? So when he comes out and has staggering things to say about sort of the ability to lead men, one thing that's never lost on me when you talk to players, I've been lucky enough in my career to talk to a lot of players that have played for several coaches, and I've asked flat out, hey, what made this guy different? What made this one hit differently? And the number one answer you will repeatedly get is, this coach seemed to invest in me as a human being. There is just something tangible to that we don't put enough weight into, that Brian Flores clearly got wrong in Miami. So when I see Fitzpatrick come out and giving this context about why he doesn't believe Flores should be is necessarily being remembered the right way for the way it ended in Miami, I think that's important context. All right, so let's talk about Cliff Kingsbury then. Cliff Kingsbury, one of the hot names. Cupid or stupid for Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach somewhere?
I don't know if I see a head coach somewhere, but where I do see as Cupid as the most perfect fit, let's say Brian Flores. I just got done talking about Brian Flores potentially being a fit in Baltimore. If they do bring in Brian Flores as their head coach, what better person to be Lamar's offensive coordinator than Cliff Kingsbury, a guy that has built his entire career on working with mobile quarterbacks. So I think Cliff Kingsbury would be a perfect fit if there is a defensive-minded head coach or like a John Harbaugh-esque kind of coach in Baltimore. It wouldn't work if, let's say, Baltimore wants to bring in like a Clint Kubiak, like an offensive guru kind of guy. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury would work with that kind of head coach. Cliff Kingsbury, I think, wants to have sole ownership of the offensive side of the ball. So if Baltimore decides to go with a defensive-minded guy, I think Cliff Kingsbury would be a perfect fit with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and that's really, when you start talking about where Cliff is perfect, there are a bunch of head coaching opportunities for defensive coordinators that need to come in with an offensive mindset of how they're going to develop their offensive plan. Cliff is going to be wildly in demand. He will be by far, I think, the most in-demand offensive coordinator. I love him with the Ravens, to your point. I love him with the Giants as an offensive coordinator. I just don't know that I make a Cupid as the head coach. I think that he is a secret weapon, especially look at the way that Kyler Murray played under him. And then, importantly, I think he did a brilliant job developing Jaden Daniels and blocking out all of the noises they gave Jaden more and more every week in that game plan last season. I thought that was great work by him. So I'm with you. I think that he's a Cupid for anybody as an offensive coordinator that's a defensive head coach. That's just a very specific Cupid monitor there. Speaking of one of those defensive guys, what about Robert Saleh? Cupid or stupid to you?
Cupid, 1000% Cupid. And, I talked about Cliff Kingsbury maybe being Lamar's offensive coordinator. Well, he needs a head coach. Why not Robert Saleh? Robert Saleh would be that defensive-minded kind of head coach that would match perfectly with Cliff Kingsbury. If I were to, be a Baltimore Ravens fan and have 3 wishes to a genie, my number 1 wish would be Robert Saleh as head coach. My number 2 wish would be Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator. You might say, well, the Robert Saleh experience with the New York Jets was a disaster. Yes, but let's look at the Jets' track record versus what we've seen from Robert Saleh in San Francisco this year. I'll go ahead and say that was more of a Jets problem, far more than it was a Robert Saleh problem. So I do think he deserves another opportunity as a head coach, and I think Baltimore would be the perfect fit.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I will also say any fan base that gets Saleh and Kingsbury, you got your Cupid. Like, if that's the dynamic tag team, congratulations.
Home run.
You just won. Yeah, you just won the hiring cycle. Jesse Minter, Cupid or stupid? I'm a little stupid on this one. Wait a year on Jesse. No offense to coach and the way it's gone with the Chargers. The Chargers have been wildly difficult to analyze this year. I think, when you look at the number of injuries that they've had, they've outplayed what any of us expected. I just think the jump from Jesse from where he is, it feels like that's a big one to me. I'd rather see him wait a year, get a little bit more ready, and then also have a better shot at a great job when there are less defensive coordinators that are also competing for. Like, if you're looking for a DC to step into a head coach job, there are certainly bigger names than Jesse right now.
I agree with you. I think that's stupid. It says mean to say that. It feels mean to say that. I think so many of these job openings are going to be looking for offensive-minded head coaches because they want to protect their number 1 investment at the quarterback position. If you're the New York Giants, your number 1 priority as a head coach is to make sure that Jackson Dart learns how to take care of himself and develops into a franchise quarterback. Same thing with the Tennessee Titans and Cam Ward. Same thing with the Raiders. How do we protect our greatest investment in your number 1 overall pick? Whether it's Fernando Mendoza, if Dante Moore decides to come out and he's the number 1 overall pick, so many of these openings I think should be looking for offensive guys to be the guy for their quarterback moving forward. And Jesse Minter just doesn't fit that bill. I think the one place where it would make sense would be Baltimore. It's not that difficult to make those ties for a guy that was in Baltimore for so many years, but there have been several reports that say the Baltimore Ravens just want to cut ties with the entire John Harbaugh tree. So the one place that would make sense isn't interested. So I say for right now, Jesse Minter stays put.
I think we both agree. Clint Kubiak, Cupid, almost anywhere. Wildly respected offensive coordinator. Look, frankly, I've been putting him in Vegas since we started this conversation about who should be the next head coach.
Oh, you are, Fitz. You're putting the offensive mastermind on your Raiders team?
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing. What I need is Clint Kubiak to have a very definitive, I love this quarterback at number 1 overall. Don't really give a damn which one it is. And then Clint Kubiak comes in and suddenly starts the long rebuild process in Vegas. I think it makes sense. I'm buying in on this.
I think he would make sense literally anywhere. I think he would make sense in New York. I think he would make sense in Tennessee. I think he would make sense with the Raiders. I don't want this for him because I have so much respect for him. He would make sense with the Arizona Cardinals. Just subtle shade to the Arizona Cardinals there. I think Clint Kubiak would be a great hire anywhere.
Yeah, Clint Kubiak, wherever he goes, becomes, I think, one of the sneaky best hires. I know we're in love with Stefanski and Harbaugh and maybe Tomlin and maybe all these other big names. I think Clint Kubiak is going to end up being a home run out of this cycle. We'll see. In the meantime, while we're predicting things, coming up next, it's never too early to predict what you'll be reading Monday. We'll give you the Monday headline that comes out of tonight's college football game next. So breaking news here, Yahoo Sports Daily. The Dolphins are working to hire John Eric Sullivan as their GM, sources tell Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport. Sullivan, who was the Packers' vice president of player personnel, is highly respected within the league. Now will play a key role in Miami's search for a new head coach. Caroline, I think probably the most interesting thing about this is that the timing continues to be very strange in Miami, in the sense that at first, we didn't see any movement with the head coach. Then we see the head coach yesterday, Mike McDaniel, fired. A lot of people thought that was related to Harbaugh. Then they wanted to start a stack bricks that way. We're hearing everything's running independent, has nothing to do with each other. Now we get a GM hiring. So it feels like things need to settle down. The dust needs to settle down. But I will give Miami credit. Bring the GM in. Let the GM pick the head coach. That's, I think, an important part of business. Hopefully that's the beginning of that process for Miami.
I believe in a traditional structure in the NFL because I have seen firsthand different structures and it all crashed and burned. It didn't work. I believe in the owner selects the general manager selects his head coach. But I think this is a fascinating hire. John Eric Sullivan, of course, he comes from the Packers brass. He actually started as an intern with the Packers in 2003, which I think is noteworthy because John Eric Sullivan has been in the building from one future Hall of Fame quarterback to another future Hall of Fame quarterback to another quarterback that looks like I'm not going to say a future Hall of Famer. Let's pump the brakes there on Jordan Love, but he is the Packers' third consecutive franchise quarterback. That's exactly what Miami is looking for. We talk so much about how the Dolphins' job isn't overly attractive because of the quarterback situation. So John Eric Sullivan has had a front row seat to how the Packers have scouted and developed quarterbacks, and that has been a big reason for the consistency of the Green Bay Packers for the last 20 plus years. So I think that's that kind of quarterback evaluation, that kind of acumen, that kind of experience, watching such a sound organization, such a well-run organization, he can bring that kind of that experience into Miami, a franchise that is, I think, craving organizational structure.
Yeah, and at the very least, I love the fact that now they get somebody in place in time to actually be part of the coaching interviews, which is such a huge part of that structure you mentioned. We both agree is the right way to build an organization. All right, let's get to Monday headlines. It's never too early to tell you what the newspaper is going to look like. Check it out. Look at this. Yep. Breaking news.
Beautiful.
The Monday headlines right there.
Stunning.
For you. This is where we get to decide. We get to decide on some highlights and some headlines. We get to pick some things that are going to happen over the weekend, and we get to sell newspapers in the process. People still buy them, kids, somewhere. All right, so extra, read all about it. Caroline, when you look in the crystal ball for Monday morning, give me a headline that you see.
All right, let me put you a picture here. You're sitting down, you have your Monday morning coffee, you're popping open your newspaper, and the sports headline says, "Extinguished. The Ducks put Sig out." That's right, you heard me. Indiana, the lone team that does not have a loss this season. Indiana that has looked perfect. Literally perfect. They don't shoot themselves in the foot. They are so incredibly surgical. They are so tough and physical on both lines of scrimmage. I think that Oregon's going to beat them today in the Peach Bowl. Here's the number one reason why. Everybody always says it's really hard to beat the same team twice. It's really hard to beat the same team twice. And sometimes you start to roll your eyes. You're like, okay, we get it. But no, we have a proof of concept of that in the postseason this year in the college football playoff. Alabama went into Athens and beat Georgia in the regular season. Georgia then turned around and clobbered Alabama in the SEC championship game. Oklahoma beat Alabama in the regular season. Alabama went into their trap, took over their trap in Norman in the first round of the college football playoff, and knocked off Oklahoma. We saw Georgia beat Ole Miss in the regular season. Everyone thought Georgia was the better team, the more physical team. Everyone thought that Georgia was a national championship contender, but no. Ole Miss beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. That is 3 games, 3 rematches that we've had so far in the postseason, and the team that lost in the regular season beat them in the postseason. This is a better Oregon team than we saw earlier in the regular season when they lost to Indiana by double digits at home. I think Oregon's got a bad taste in their mouth since they lost to Indiana the first time. I think it's a different story this time.
So you have the right game, but the wrong headline, and frankly, the wrong
Ooh.
pick. The right headline from Monday morning is going to be, instead of your put Sig out, which by the way is brilliant, is going to be Aura
Thank you.
gone. All right, Aura gone, because Signetti's going to get this thing done. Look, one of the things you just mentioned about the rematch, and you're so right. My logical brain can never make this make sense. Why is it tough to beat a team a second time? Whatever one team saw on film that they're going to adjust to, the other team should also be able to see on film to adjust to. It's never made sense to me when we sit here and say, well, it's hard to beat a team twice. I get it, but my God, in the NFL, we see it all the time. We see teams get swept by other teams in their own division all the time. I understand the way the numbers are going, but here's the interesting thing. In every one of those matchups, we have said afterwards, man, I can't believe that insert losing coach here got outcoached in that game. I don't think Dan Lanning is going to outcoach Curt Cignetti. Curt Cignetti has become a cheat code. Curt Cignetti's ability to get his team focused, and that man we see right there that will remind us they're just together. They're just together as one big group. Like you can't break this, Caroline. There's no way to break these fists when they come together in a little ball to tell you how together they are.
I hear you.
Curt Cignetti, you just got to Google him. All he does is win. All Indiana does is win. They are undefeated for a reason. Fernando Mendoza's been on a heater, but most importantly, their defense has played lights out with a lot of speed. I think this is going to be a hard-hitting, electric football game, and I think this is going to be one of the ultimate prove it moments from two top quarterbacks. This is going to be the game of the week, of the century, the millennium, of the hour. It is going to live up to all the hype, but it's going to lead to Aura gone. How about another headline? Give me another Monday headline. Let's go to the NFL. You got a headline for me for Monday?
All right, we'll flip over to the NFL side of things. Headline reads, Mayday, Mayday! Patriots struck by lightning as Justin Herbert takes down New England. I am such a believer in having been there before. You say this all the time. You're such a believer in proof of concept, as am I. And look at poor Drake May. His hair's stuck up. He's all burned. His jersey's, seen better days. But that's what it's going to look like. Because, look, the Chargers have been battle-tested. I know that they are so banged up. I am terrified of Justin Herbert getting absolutely destroyed behind this offensive line. But the Chargers are battle-tested just in their division. 2 games against the Chiefs, 2 games against the Denver Broncos, and then 2 games against the Raiders. But they've also played the Steelers. They've played the Raiders. They've played some of the top teams in the NFL this year. What is the one hole that we can kind of nitpick with the New England Patriots? Yes, they've looked great. Yes, Drake May has been an MVP caliber type of player for the majority of the season, but they ain't played nobody, Paul. And I think that being battle-tested, I think having postseason experience, that's important. Sure, Justin Herbert only has 2 playoff games under his belt. It's 2 more than Drake May has. And postseason experience in the NFL is important. And I think there's value to consistently knocking on the door before you officially break through. So for that, taking the Chargers.
Look, part of the Chargers getting a little bit lucky right now, at least as we stand today. I consistently, as a fan of a West Coast team, hate the NFL playoff scheduling because the amount of times that they decide that the best game to put at night is the New England game, which they've done here. My argument has always been they could have put the New England game, I don't know, at 1 o'clock when it's likely going to be a little bit warmer. They could have put the New England game at 4:30 instead of the Philly game. Philly and New England could have been early, and Jacksonville, which is warm weather, could have been the Sunday night game. But no, they never do that. They seem to always put a West Coast going east on a Sunday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Well, the weather's going to be like in the mid-30s, like almost 40 degrees, not that much wind, like no snow. Like right now I'm looking at the weather and I'm saying, man, Chargers, the weather gods shined on you. I live not too far from Foxborough, a couple hours from Foxborough. And I'm telling you, compared to what we've seen over the last 3 weeks, 40 is balmy. Like, so I'm looking at all of this saying, maybe you're right. Maybe this all comes together. The weather holds off. The Chargers come out. Herbert has a big day. Oh, I love this is just a fiery headline. I'll give you one from me. All right, let's see this. Based partially on the last segment we had. How about this? Pack it up. All right, pack it up. Double whammy. Packers eliminated. LaFleur fired. All right, in the snow, the Packers get just railed by the Bears. It doesn't go the way anyone wants. Sunday, we wake up to shocking news from Shefty that all of a sudden we have a massive firing in the NFL. LaFleur gone. This is the sort of drama we need. You go to bed Sunday night after watching what I can only hope is 37 inches of snow in a game between Green Bay and Chicago, because that's the way the football gods intended it to be watched. You give me electric energy all the way down to the end. The Bears just absolutely ram them like they did to Philadelphia. It leaves a bad taste in the mouths of the Packers organization. Sunday morning, boom, LaFleur is the hottest name on the market. I mean hot both in the way he looks and the way he coaches. Come on now, what do you think?
That is not the first time that you have mentioned how good-looking LaFleur is on this show. Just today,
he could be in a boy band.
He could be in
a boy band. I'm jealous. I just straight out. I mean, look at that chiseled jaw.
I look. He's a good-looking dude. I'm not going to deny that. But hey, Caleb Williams saying your girl in your gym is mine, LaFleur. I wouldn't be shocked to see that. But I think the thing that I've been talking about with Chicago and the fact that they get home field advantage, I thought that's going to be such a big advantage if you're playing the Rams, but they're not. They're playing the Packers. You think the Packers are new to cold weather games? You think the Packers are new to snowy and blistery conditions? Absolutely not. I would not be surprised to see the Bears win this game. I know it's going to be packed. It is going to be loud. It is going to be rowdy at Soldier Field, but this also is an environment, Soldier Field itself and the weather, that's going to be new to the Green Bay Packers. So honestly, I think I have to disagree with you on this one for a couple of reasons. I do think the Packers win this game, but even if they don't, I don't think LaFleur gets fired.
You're probably right, but I'm trying to sell newspapers. All right, we got newspapers
but
closing.
Be spicy.
I'm trying to sell news. I mean, it's like
let your freak flag fly, Fitz.
Thank you very much. The Yahoo Sports Daily paper
Always
needs to move some units. So there we go. That's the way it goes. All right, that's what we
in this
say.
Economy.
Coming up next, we're gonna figure 100%. We're gonna figure out what Ben Fawkes has to say about all of this. Ben Fawkes joins the show, gives us some of the gambling news and notes you need going into the weekend. The result is the result. Had fun chatting with Pete Tars about his thoughts on losing in the final week of the Circa NFL Survivor contest for the second straight year, both on heartbreaking walk-off finishes. Ben Fawkes wrote about it for Yahoo Sports. He joins us now, as he does every single week, to talk about a bunch of the betting. We'll get to the games in a second, but, I mean, Ben, I can't imagine the heartbreak. Finishing second is nothing in these things to shake a stick at. Wildly difficult to do, but man, the Bengals cost him a chance of more than $3 million. Tell everybody about it.
Yeah, so Fitz, you've probably been around some of this out in Vegas, but having lived out in Vegas, seeing this live at Circa, it's both very exciting and kind of very heartbreaking when you're watching these guys. Sometimes it's groups of players sweat out these games. For people who don't know, Survivor is basically an NFL contest. You pick one team each week to just win. Doesn't have to do with the spread, and you're not allowed to pick the same team twice in the season. Circa actually also has a separate week for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. So to survive, as they say, and make it to the end of week 18, you actually need 20 correct picks. So this guy last year was 19-0, made it to the last week. He then took the Falcons, who were an 8-point favorite, against the Panthers. The Falcons needed that win to go in to make the playoffs. They, of course, lose in overtime. So last year, he lost. I think there were 18 people going into the final week. This year, he again makes it all the way back to the final week. There's only 6 people, and it's a bigger prize pool. So an implied basically value of over $3 million for that entry. He picks the Bengals. They have no business losing that game. For anyone who watched, and maybe there weren't that many since it didn't have any playoff implications. The Browns have 2 defensive touchdowns. The Bengals take a late lead, and then of course Shedeur Sanders leads the Browns down the field to kick again, not a short field goal either, a 49-yard field goal through the uprights. Browns win 20-18. So I wrote a newser on this on Sunday, was able to follow up and talk to him on Tuesday. He was, I have to say, shockingly zen, I think, about the whole thing. He has worked like with a mental coach, which is actually something very interesting and for a separate discussion for sports betting. But he was very much like, once I made the decision, I kind of have nothing to worry about. I sweat the decision, then it's kind of out of my hands. He also did hedge a good amount on the Browns money line, so he won a significant amount. We'll just call it 6 figures, but not 7 figures, certainly. So definitely hurts, but don't feel too bad. He still made away with plenty of money.
I think there are a lot of football fans out there that could use a Zen coach, especially this weekend when we have 5 consecutive days of playoff football going back to last night. We have more college football playoff action today and then NFL postseason throughout the rest of the weekend. Look at God. What can't she do? Let's start with the NFL postseason. Looking at some of these spreads across the NFL, are there any spreads that you feel like Vegas is just really off on?
I don't know about really off, because then I'd be saying I'm smarter than the odds makers, which I most certainly am not. But I was a little surprised when the line came out that the Patriots were a 3.5 point favorite against the Chargers. And I say that just because, as we've talked about throughout the season, right? You're not basically taking these teams at necessarily full strength. You're taking them at what they are right now. And so I think that the Patriots, it's as in, they've played really well. They've played an easy schedule. Actually, by FTN Fantasy, they've played the third easiest schedule since 1978. But you can only play who's in front of you, and ultimately, they're the number one offense in terms of EPA per play, the number one offense in EPA per dropback, only 24th rushing. But they're a very good team. They have a very good head coach in Mike Vrabel, who's been in the postseason before. They have a good home field advantage. The Chargers have to travel west to east. Justin Herbert's banged up. They don't have their 2 offensive tackles. So it just feels like, even though the Chargers have a very good defense, I have trouble with how the Patriots are going to lose this game. Now, Justin Herbert is excellent, but again, he's not at full strength, has that banged up left hand. And the Chargers just don't have as many offensive weapons. I feel like they don't have as many ways to win the game, whereas the Patriots, I feel like, have a couple routes. One weakness for the Patriots, though, they haven't been very good in the red zone. I believe they're statistically about the best offense outside of the red zone. I think they're 17th in the red zone and 30th rushing in the red zone. So if they move the ball, aren't able to score touchdowns, kick field goals, keep the Chargers in it, the Chargers potentially could cover a win. But to me, it just seems like, I was surprised this line wasn't a little higher in favor of the Patriots.
I'm still lost on that game on what to expect. It's so wild. All right, we got 2 games where we have 1 point road favorites. The Packers are favored at the Bears. The Bills are favored at the Jags. So which of the home underdogs in that situation do you think has a better chance of winning and defending their home field?
Yeah, this is, you guys were talking about the Bears Packers before. I think this is by the slimmest of margins. I will go with the Jaguars. At some books, this line has actually moved to pick. So open Bills -1.5, Bills -1. It is at pick at some books. We could certainly see the favorite flip and the Jaguars be favored. I think this just comes down to a couple things. The first is the Jaguars have that nobody believes in us, even though they won their division, right? They've won 8 straight. They've also covered 8 straight games. And they've played some bad teams, but they've also beaten some really good teams. They went into Denver and won going away in that game. So I feel like they know that they can get it done. They've been playing well for a couple months. Whereas the Bills, this is also a little of an unfamiliar circumstance, right? They're used to winning the AFC East, playing their first game at home, obviously eventually having to play Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. They don't have those potential obstacles in their way, but it is a good Jaguars team. And ultimately, the thing that where I think this game will be won, the Bills, James Cook led the league in rushing. They have that really good rushing attack, historically good offensive line. The Jaguars allowed the least amount of yards rushing per game. They didn't allow any rusher to rush for more than 75 yards in a game this season. So, can the Bills run the ball against a really stout Jaguars defense? That's going to be the question. And then Josh Allen, and he's had the foot injury. He's been a little banged up. The Bills also have a laundry list of injuries. So who actually is out on the field, I think will be big in that. The Packers Bears, to me, is like the definition of a toss up. Packers have limped into the postseason. They lost 4 straight games. Defense doesn't look the same without Micah Parsons, but you kind of feel like they're a better team than the Bears overall, as well as the Bears have played. And like Caroline's saying, they play in cold weather. That stadium's going to be rocking, but they basically controlled the last game in Chicago until the fourth quarter, an onside kick, and ended up losing the game. So they know that they can beat that team even at the diminished Packers team, right? Without Tucker Kraft, without Micah Parsons. So that's just going to be, again, can they stop the run? I think Green Bay about 25th at stopping the run. The Bears have the best rushing offense in the league. And if it's cold, it's windy, it's snowy, that might be the game. Just can Green Bay stop the Bears rushing attack, especially if the Packers can't throw the ball?
Yeah, Ben, now feels like the best time to get some value on Super Bowl futures. The Seattle Seahawks are Super Bowl favorites at plus 375. The Rams just behind them with the second best odds at plus 425. What do you make of how Vegas is valuing both of these teams?
Yeah, really interesting up top, right? Because you have the Seahawks, they obviously have the bye. The Rams are, it's very clear, talking to a lot of odds makers, they're the best team in the NFL, according to odds makers, right? The number one power rated team that's been that way since the second half of the season. Earlier in the season, it was the Packers when they had Micah Parsons, right? They had everyone healthy. Obviously, a very different team now. But you see, those odds are so close. To me, I don't think there's a lot of value on either one, frankly. The Seahawks, because they haven't been amazing at home. They've actually been really good on the road under Mike McDonald. Now, obviously, you'd still rather play at home in that environment, but they haven't been as good at home. And ultimately, it comes down to, of all the quarterbacks there, right? Who do you trust? Even in the NFC, is Sam Darnold. How high is he on that list, right? Now, this is speaking as a scarred Vikings fan as well, but we've seen that this season too. He has that defense. We saw against the 49ers in week 18. They look great. He did enough to win. But if there's a game where the defense is a little leakier and he has to come back, do you trust him to do that? And for the Rams, they are a 10.5 point favorite at the Panthers. That's the largest road favorite in NFL playoff history. You would expect them to win that game. However, they also just lost to the Panthers in Carolina a few weeks ago. And ultimately, barring I believe the 49ers beating the Eagles, which also seems unlikely to me, they're still going to have to go to Philadelphia, the Rams, or to Seattle, two difficult places to play, where they're probably going to be an underdog. I think it'll be close. They're certainly against the Seahawks. So a tough path for both, but just not one where I think the odds are great for either team. You kind of want to see where the Rams potentially end up in the next round before you're placing that bet.
Ben, a philosophical question for you that a lot of people watching are going to have to figure out in the next 72 hours. when lineups are set, or when lines are set, I should say. We're about to see a winner tonight, which is going to mean a national championship line is going to be set. Over the weekend, we're going to see wild card matchups where new games are announced, and that means suddenly lines are set. What's the right approach when you're betting this stuff? Is it when the line is first set, are you better off throwing some cash on it then, or are you better off waiting to see how the line normalizes over the course of 3 or 4 days?
It's a great question, and I'd say it probably depends on what you consider kind of your level of expertise in betting, right? So if you are somebody who's making your own numbers and you say, hey, I have the Seahawks, I have the Rams, my number is X, and you compare it to the opening number and it's different, then I would bet right when the line comes out, right? Because you're saying, hey, I have an advantage based on my numbers versus that. I think otherwise, which is for the majority of people, you probably just want to see how that line shifts, because people are going to be betting who probably have more information than you do, or better models, et cetera. And you can see kind of how the line moves. And ultimately, there isn't as big a difference, right, in some of these lines. If it's -1.5 to -1 to pick them, there's not as big a difference. Playoff lines are so much sharper because there's also fewer games. We now have 18 weeks of information on these teams and kind of how injuries impact everyone. So you're unlikely to see as big line movement. Right, we've already seen 2 points of movement between the Eagles and 49ers. That's a big line move in the playoffs towards the Eagles, but you're unlikely to see as much of that. So I think you probably want to wait, see kind of how those lines move a bit, and then as you do your research over the course of the week and feel better, even if you're betting into a, quote, worse line, I think that's probably the way you're going to want to go for most people who are the average, better.
You guys can read him on yahoosports.com/betting. Follow him on @BenFawkes22. Ben, always appreciate your time, man. Enjoy a wild weekend of football. Thanks for all the information, insight, and expertise, my friend.
Can't wait. I'll be on the couch.
Oh, God.
You're the best, Ben. Thank you.
I'm going to be curled up and let the dogs be my company. It's going to be perfect. All right, we're going to preview Wild Card Weekend the way only this show can. I can promise you that. That's coming up next on Yahoo Sports.
Can't wait.
It's Wild Card Weekend. You see the matchups: 2 games on Sunday, 2 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, 1 game on Monday. It is an epic weekend of incredible football. You could argue that this is, in my opinion, the best sports weekend of the entire year, especially after what we got last night and what we're going to get tonight, what I think is going to be an epic college football matchup. So to preview the Wild Card round, Caroline, we're going to do it the way only this show can. It is time for Bart or Fart. This is where we bring in a little Bart Scott. We tell you, we break down the games. We're going to figure out. Usually we do this. We tell you if the game's a Bart or Fart. Now we're in the playoffs. Every game's a Bart, right? So we know that it's a Bart. We're going to do it a little differently. We're going to decide which game is the biggest Bart, which you'll hear the usual sound effect when it's the biggest Bart.
Can't wait.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bart.
In which game is the biggest fart? That would be the opposite of a Bart. And the biggest fart will get you this sound. Got it. Just never gets
Didn't
tired.
even get a new one for the playoffs.
I mean, no. That's playoff caliber. So we'll give you three categories. We'll give you a biggest Bart. We'll give you a biggest fart, and we'll give you a biggest wild card. Like, I don't know, could be great, could be terrible. Let's start because we're poly positive on a Friday with the biggest Bart. How many? You tell me what the game is, and then how many Barts you give it.
There are several Bart contenders on this slate, obviously, because it's the NFL postseason. But I think the Bartiest of all Barts, it gets 10 Barts from me. It's Bears-Packers. Are you kidding me? It's one of the best, if not. Yep, exactly, Bart. I cannot wait for this one. This is probably the best rivalry in all of the NFL. I love Saints-Falcons. I love Ravens-Steelers. So many great rivalries that we have in this league. Nothing beats Bears-Packers, in my opinion. So we get this game, this rivalry game, in the postseason. I am so here for it. And Chicago coming on the scene, Ben Johnson's first year, Caleb Williams' breakout season versus the Packers. They have a lot to show for themselves. They trade for Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons gets hurt. How does this defense recover? Can Jordan Love carry this team through the playoffs? It's storylines galore, not to mention a little razzle-dazzle with some snow in Soldier Field. Mwah, chef's kiss. That's the cherry on top of it all.
The problem is you're right, and that makes it boring because that game is worth like, I don't know, 87 Barts. I won't make them press the button 87 times to make him say can't wait. You're right on this one. Can I give you, since we agree it's this one, but I like to mix things up, can I give you the honorable mention, the one that was like most years would be that? The other, I think, of the finest games to me, I'm actually going to give you Bills-Jags. Right, because I think there are certain games that give you the opportunity to really make a sweeping statement, right? Like, so we've been sitting here just saying, I don't know about Jacksonville. That's kind of the overall. If you surveyed right now 100 fans in a Buffalo Wild Wings during the weekend and said, what do you think of the Jags? 96 of them are going to say, I don't know, right? Like, so this becomes such a key game for Liam Cohen and for Trevor Lawrence and for this Jags defense has been so opportunistic. And also, man, I'm just anticipating, like, no matter what happens on Monday, this game will give us a storyline. Because if the Bills lose, then we are going to come in and say, how? How in the hell in a year where there's no Lamar and there's no Mahomes, Justin Herbert is beat up in the playoffs, there's no, his team, I should say, there's no Joe Burrow in the playoffs. Like, if Josh Allen doesn't win in this year's playoffs, there's going to be plenty of people that say, when? So I can't wait because I believe, like right now, I think if you just injected truth serum in the veins of most fans and you said, who you taking in the AFC? I still think most fans are going to say Bills because of Josh Allen and because we have no idea what to make of the rest of the teams playing this weekend. We can find fatal flaws all over the board. So we are just continually going back to the Buffalo Bills sort of bandwagon on this. I think because of the storylines, this one is also a huge part. It's not quite the Bears-Packers part. I'll give you that. But I think it deserves honorable mention. How about the opposite side of it?
Well, let me just point out, though, the fact that we have the ultimate Bart and an honorable mention Bart, and neither of those is Niners-Eagles. Like, this is a battle of the Titans, a battle of the heavyweights in the NFC. We're talking about the 49ers that look like one of the best teams in the league, and a guy in Kyle Shanahan who we believe should be in consideration for Coach of the Year against the reigning Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. There's some juice. There's some there. The reason why I didn't put this game in mine is because this Eagles offense is so boring to watch. How can it be a Bart if you literally are allergic to throwing the football?
You're 1,000% right. Like, I'm not convinced we're not going to get, like, a hot take here. I think this game has a better chance of being a fart than it does a Bart. Like, from an actual football standpoint, not
expert
from
analysis,
not from. I mean, look, you can only get that here on YSD. I keep running this back in my mind. I'm like, we're going to see Philly's defensive line dominate San Francisco in the second half, and Jalen Hurts isn't going to throw a single pass, and we're going to sit there and say, was this football? Did we just watch modern football? Like, that game's going to be just damn ugly. All right, but it's not the biggest fart. What to you is the biggest fart? We've talked about the best. What's the worst?
It's Texans Steelers. Talk about allergic to offense. That is the Texans and Steelers game. I think a big old fart that we're going to see. First and foremost, I don't want to see this Texans pass rush going up against a million-year-old Aaron Rodgers. That's elder abuse. That's not nice. That's not going to be fair, and it's going to be hard to watch for 60 minutes. There's also, I wouldn't be surprised if the score through 3 quarters is like 3-0, 7-3. Like there's going to be no points scored in this game. Neither of these teams move the ball overly effectively. Plus, this Texans defense, I think, is going to keep Aaron Rodgers and this Pittsburgh Steelers offense what there is of it at bay. So I think this game is going to be boring. It's a fart.
Yeah, we agree that this game is a fart, and it was almost my biggest fart. But because the one thing we don't agree on, I think there's going to be a lot of points for one team. I think the Texans are going to absolutely. I think the Texans are going to rail the Steelers in this game. This to me feels like the sort of game that it's 24-7. It's 24-6.
That's not that many points.
That's winning by almost 3 touchdowns. I'll give.
Wait,
I'm
it's
giving you
winning by a
double-digit
wide
win.
margin. But this isn't going to be like Niners Bears.
No. But still, I think this is. If you told me today that the final score was 31-3, I wouldn't be surprised. I think the Steelers are going to get absolutely murdered by the Texans in this one. But there's a bigger fart, and it's the worst kind. It's the silent but deadly, and I call it that because none of you really want to watch this game. Nobody even wants to acknowledge it. You're sitting in the room and you're like, yeah, it happened. That would be Panthers and Rams. I get it. Yeah, you can double fart it too. Give me the one more. Yeah, there we go.
Enough of that. I can't do any more of that.
3.
No,
it's a triple. It's a
you
triple.
guys, cut it out.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, this game, we're trying to convince the world that they want to watch a team with a losing record take on the Rams because they lost to the Rams already lost to the Panthers, and we're going to make it. Now, this game is going to be a blowout. This game is going to be the opportunity for you to just sort of reset. If there's one game, like if you're, sitting around with the family and you're trying to pick the one game that you're going to sacrifice, you can't watch this weekend, but what you're going to do is you're going to package that in one of those, I'm a great dad. So it's like, hey, why don't we do something? You know what? Forget about that game. We'll watch some of the other games. I'd love to take you out to lunch. That's this game. This is the game that you make counter plans on to win brownie points for the fact that you were willing to get off the couch over the course of the weekend. If there's one football game in general to skip this weekend, it's this blowout and waiting on Saturday afternoon.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and she is very gorgeous to me. We may have said that on November 30th when the Rams went into Charlotte and lost to the Panthers. Anything can happen in the NFL postseason. Although I do think you're right.
You just told me that the Panthers have
my city's team.
You just told me the Panthers have a great personality, and has anybody has ever been hooked up by when a friend says, "Oh my God, she's got the best personality," don't take the date. All right, the Panthers have the best personality,
She's so funny.
And that's great. But the dress looks great. It looks great.
She's a really good friend.
Okay, there we are. What about the biggest wild card? The game that absolutely you just walk into this weekend, you're like, I don't know, Mike could.
Jags Bills. It's chaotic beauty. I don't say it's a wild card like, oh, it's going to be a bad game. I don't want to watch it. No, give me every single second of Jags Bills. But these two teams are drunk. The Jags have won in the most bumbly, fumbly, crazy, drunk ways, really toward the beginning of the season before we really saw Trevor Lawrence really get on a heater. But I think both of these quarterbacks can be total wild cards. Again, in the most stunningly beautiful way. It's going to be a fun kind of wild card to watch. But the Bills are a wild card. The Jags are a wild card. These two teams playing each other are going to be a total and complete wild card. It's going to be a beautiful mess. It's going to be a chaotic vision, and I'm here for it. And I truly, Fitz, I have no idea how this game is going to go. I think this game is the most difficult for me to decide keys to the game or really get my finger on how each of these two teams win. I think it'll be who has the ball last wins this one in an offensive shootout.
I will tell everybody the same thing I constantly say on games like this. If you're so confident on it, then tweet me, Matt Jason Fitz. That's fine. Tweet me anytime. Hit me with the receipt of your betting receipt on it. Because, like, I don't know anybody that's willing to bet the house on this game. I just don't know anybody that can. It's too tight to call. I think you're right. It's a great wild card. I would add Chargers Patriots to this. We've talked a little bit about this game, but the fact is the Patriots haven't beaten anybody, and the Chargers are a shell of, like, if the Chargers were healthy, I think the Chargers would be the number 1 seed and likely the Super Bowl favorite out of the AFC. And, this is such a huge moment for Justin Herbert, who doesn't have a lot of proof of concept of playing particularly incredibly in some of these big playoff games or big games in general like this that can result in the playoffs. So I think it's a narrative maker for the Chargers. I think it's a narrative maker for the Patriots. If the Patriots go out and clobber them, then it ends any conversation about they haven't played anybody. If the Chargers go out and clobber the Patriots, it's going to create conversation about where the Patriots for real, and it's only going to create more Justin Herbert stands across the landscape. So either way, I can't wait for every ounce of it, Caroline. This is going to be a wild weekend.
It's going to be a great weekend. I love the fact that we get so many young quarterbacks who are getting their first or, at the beginning of their playoff experience. Drake May, you look at Bryce Young, several of these quarterbacks that are getting their kind of first tastes of the NFL postseason, which breeds so much unpredictability.
Which is going to lead for a chaotic Monday. We will be back right here at 9 a.m. as we are every single weekday. Come hang out with us. For Caroline Fenton, I'm Jason Fitz. Enjoy the wildest weekend in sports of the year. Have fun.